Welcome back to the channel. So the time has finally come for me to unveil the next part of my most recent Crusade list project. It's been several months, and if you're following current affairs, there's been a major lockdown in Australia where I'm based that really saw me stuck at home for the best part of the last 5 months, which you'd think would be a great time to get hobby done. But unfortunately, a lot of things conspired to make it difficult. Most notably, the place that I used to do hobby, my wife needed me to clear off so kids could do homeschooling from there. So it's only actually been in the last week or so, and we're recording this now at the end of November, that I've actually gotten this project to where I wanted it to, that I could record a new video to talk about where it's at. So where actually is it at? Well, I guess the big news is that the Crusade list I set out to paint is now fully painted. I mean, this has really been a bit of a labour of love, this project, not because I'm a particular fan of Space Wolves, which I'm actually quite not, more because I guess this is a challenge I wanted to set for myself. One of the reasons I'd always said I would never paint Space Wolves is I was not good at skin, I was not good at hair, I was not good at fur. You know, I've always preferred armies with much more armour, or vehicles that have a more regular shape to them. And so I want to teach myself some new techniques here with the Space Wolves. I wanted to do something that my friends wouldn't expect. I wanted something I could use a lot of my spare pieces from my bits box for. And really this is as much an exercise of doing this army on the cheap as much as possible. So it really felt like an accomplishment to get to the point that I've gotten to now. And of course I still plan to play them in our Crusade campaign. I still plan to probably collect more and paint more as well. But I wanted to give you an update of where I'd gotten to so far with the first 50 power level, which is the minimum required to start a new Crusade list. Alright, so onto the painting. I actually ended up using 51 paints across the full army. I'm not going to go through them all here, but I will call out maybe just a couple of paints that I got some interesting effects with. The first one I need to call out as a great colour is Corvus Black. You'll note here I didn't use Abaddon Black or Chaos Black anywhere in these models. I used Corvus Black as my standard black. And the reason for that is Corvus Black is actually a very dark grey, but when you layer it with either Basilicanum Grey or Black Templar, it actually gives you a nice shadow. Like normally if you put Black Templar over Abaddon Black, the Abaddon Black is so dark you don't see any additional shadow from the Black Templar. But because Corvus Black is just more of a dark grey, you do still get some contrast between the darker areas and lighter areas, which for Space Marines is absolutely great when you're doing things like the soft sections of their armour, inside their elbow joints and behind their knee joints and their hip joints, because it does give you that good, I guess, rubberized look, not galvanized rubber, whatever it's called, but that style, especially with things like the bikes, their tyres look good on, and then even just doing things like the black casings for the bolt weapons, it was fine to do Corvus Black, then a wash of Black Templar, and then use Dawnstone to pick out the edges. So I was happy with how that one turned out. I also experimented a bit with Guilliman Blue. So Guilliman Blue is one of the older, not washes, they call them glaze paints. I don't think it's produced anymore, but I did pick up a few pots of it before it went out of production, along with Waywatcher Green and Lamenter's Yellow. So one of the things that I found Guilliman Blue for great in the past is doing plasma coils when you want to do blue plasma coils on the plasma guns. Now in this particular army I actually used Waywatcher Green to do them in green, but I did use the blue for all the ice weapon effects. So you'll see when I get to the Dreadnought and also the Rune Priest, I used Guilliman Blue as a nice effect. So pretty much white base, Guilliman Blue wash over the top or glaze over the top, and then a Prexity white dry brush just to bring out the edges once again. Really, really simple, and I was really happy with how it turned out. And then also, pretty much all of my flesh, I just used Guilliman Flesh. Speaking with the guy at my local Games Workshop store, Warhammer store, he actually said he never puts Guilliman Flesh over Wraithbone or over Greyseer or over any sort of white. He always does a flesh colour first, like say Cadian Flesh Tone, then a reduced or a mix of Guilliman Flesh with Lime, well not Lime medium, but the contrast medium to thin it out, and then over the top, and then using once again Cadian Flesh to smooth out the details. I really like Guilliman Flesh just over Wraithbone. I might use a bit of Guilliman Flesh just to smooth out some of the larger areas, especially on characters, say with bald heads, for example. But I swear by Guilliman Blue. My only complaint is that there are 3 flesh tone contrast colours. I honestly can't name it off the top of my head. Fire Slave, no, not Fire Slave, Bright. I think there's Fire Slave Flesh or something along those lines. In any case, all 3 of them. So I recently did a squad of Sisters Repentia for my Sororitas army, and I had 9 models, so I did 3 in each of the flesh tones, and seriously, I could not tell you after the fact which model was done with which flesh tone, because they all look the same to me. There's so little variance between them. I really feel like I have to put like a different base colour than Wraithbone down to get any sort of major variance in the flesh tones from those 3 contrasts. So that's a bit disappointing, but overall I'm really happy with how Guilliman Blue turned out on this particular set. The other one that I did a bit differently is I went for a dark base rim. I actually used Corvus Black once again for the dark base rim. Normally, when I've done bases in the past, I've tried to paint the rim either the same sort of colouring as the top, or the effect of, I guess, going underground. So if it's grass on top and green, I'd do a brown ring to indicate, I guess, the soil beneath the grass. But this time I've gone for Valhallan Snow over Astrogranite Debris. So in this case, I thought it might look better to actually go with a black ring, and I'm happy with how that turned out. So yeah, they're my colours. If you're looking for similar effect, here's a list. But not to say that you would do it the same way I did. This is just what I use. This is my own experience. Alright, so let's look at the models. First one is my Space Marine Captain with Jump Pack, or in this case, effectively a Wolf Lord. I've called this guy Cargill Wormslayer, and I've decided that my leader of my Crusade fleet has a history fighting Tyranids, hence the Wormslayer component. So with this guy, I really wish I had sub-assembled him or painted them in pieces first, because the biggest problem I had when I built this guy was the very limited amount of movement I had in the right shoulder because of the jump pack, and it's meant that the Thunderhammer he has, which has a sort of wolf motif on the head, comes across the body to the point it makes it quite difficult to get into the chest area and under the shield. So yeah, this was a really unfun model to paint fully assembled. I'm still happy with how it turned out. I don't know if it's my camera, but I can look at models that I painted and say, that looks great. And then I get a close-up with a camera and go, that looks terrible. So in this particular case, I'm not sure I'm happy with how this picture looks, but I pick up the model and look at it in my hand and go, hey, this guy, I'm happy with this guy. I'll happily have this guy on the table. I'll happily play with him in my army. So look, I've always wanted to have a Smash Captain. Well, not always, but I do want to have a Smash Captain for my army. So I look forward to using Cargill Wormslayer, although he will not be used in my first battle. In my first battle, instead, I'll be using my Librarian, Rurik Weirdfang, or Rune Priest, I should say. Now, with this guy, I realised too late I made a mistake when I was putting him together, because his right arm I got from this, I can't remember whether it was a Space Wolf upgrade pack, the old pre-Primaris one, or if it was from the Blood Claws / Grey Hunters pack. But I realised that his right arm is not a powered armoured arm. It actually has like a cloth arm. So it looks like it was supposed to be from a scout. Now I painted up like the power armour. You really got to pick the model up and look closely at it. But now that I've noticed it, I can't unsee it, of course, which is it's always going to bother me. But with this guy, I had a lot of challenges. I had cut away his 25mm base, as you would have seen in the last video, and attached that base onto a 32mm base because I wanted to try and keep all the base sizes uniform, and apparently 32mm is a legal size for a non-Primaris Librarian, as is 25mm. Not that I plan to take these guys to tournaments, just that's what I was looking at. And because of the way the base is shaped, I couldn't get it perfectly flat. So the middle of the base was sitting on top of the middle of the 32mm base, but there was a gap around the outside edge. So I used the Astrogranite Debris to build up from the edge of the base up to the edge of the platform he stands on, and then shove more Astrogranite Debris underneath to create more structure to it. and then once I was done, I just went over the top with the Valhallan Snow, and I'm really happy with how that base turned out. He doesn't look stupidly tall compared to everybody else, even though he's slightly elevated than the rest. He goes quite nicely with my Wolf Lord. You can see here in this picture the effect I got on the sword by doing a white scar base followed by a glaze of Guilliman blue followed by a dry brush of Praxetti white. So the other thing with these guys, it's harder to tell in this picture, but you'll see it in some of the other ones. I have not historically bothered doing the whites and pupils of eyes. I've normally just gone over the whole face with flesh tone and figured that these guys are small enough and squinting enough that it's not going to bother. I really wanted to get this technique down pat, so you'll see with these guys I did white on their teeth, I did white on their eyes, I did pupils. You can sort of see it in this picture, but it's definitely a lot more obvious when you look at the model in person, but you'll also see it in some of the later models I'm going to be going through. Okay, so let's move on to troops now. First off, we've got Pack Stonehelm, and these are my 5 Bloodclaws. So I've got my Sergeant in the middle there, set up with a Power Fist and a Bolt Pistol. Of course, Space Wolves in 9th edition, when they charge, they get +1 to hit. So normally a Power Fist would be a 4+ to hit, because it's -1 to hit, but when they charge, you'll still get a 3+, and his brothers will all get a 2+ with their chain swords. So I didn't mind taking Power Fists and Thunderhammers in this army because of that +1 to hit that Space Wolves benefit from as part of their chapter abilities. And then just in this picture to the right of the Sergeant, or the pack leader, they are allowed to take a plasma pistol on one of their models. So you'll see the model there has a plasma pistol along with his chain sword. And I gave him a helmet rather than open face like the rest, just to sort of distinguish him. He's also got the bit of bling on his backpack as well. So look, these guys turned out okay. I feel. I used spare pieces from this box to do the Devastators you'll see later on as well. So I was trying to make it not so obvious that they were the same chests and the same legs. But yeah, these guys, I'm happy with how they turned out. Certainly had to learn how to do the pelts. The wolf tails they all have hanging from them, and then obviously, as you can see here, the faces and the hair, trying to get that looking good as well, especially red hair. I guess I've always looked at red hair when it's painted, thought that looks really unnatural, but I don't know, it doesn't look, in my opinion, as bad with Space Wolves. Alright, also on the troop side, then we've got Pack Fellhammer. This was the first squad I finished. When I was actually painting, my original plan was to do the entire army at the same pace, so literally all of the Rust Grey, then all of the Agrax Earthshade, Recess Shade, then all of the Fenrisian Grey, etc., etc. I got to that point, I'd done all the armour, all the shade, all the Fenrisian Grey, and I was talking to the guy at my local Warhammer shop and talking about it, and he said, so how many have you finished? I said, I haven't finished any because I'm literally doing the entire army in one go. And he said, that's mad. Like, literally, you should be... You'll burn out if you're trying to do every single detail on all 30-odd models in one go. So you try and finish each squad at a time. So after I got to the point of doing all the armour, all the wash, or all the recess, all the highlight, I thought, okay, I will now go through and finish these one squad at a time. And so my Assault Intercessors here were the squad that I finished first. I did get a little bit lazy with these models. The entire squad here is all edge highlighted with Fenrisian Grey. With all the firstborn Marines, I decided I would get their edge highlighting with a dry brush of Fenrisian Grey. So they've still got that sort of edge component to it, but it doesn't quite have the same level of crispness that the Assault Intercessors do when you pick up and look at them into the eye. This was my first time experimenting with these flesh colours, with these hair colours. I really did like how these guys turned out. Sergeant, of course, has the hand flamer and the thunderhammer, and then the rest of the guys have their stand heavy bolt pistols and chain swords. And these guys are actually a very effective unit. They're one power level less than the Bloodclaws, but actually a much more effective unit. So I would try to use these guys as much as possible. Also because Primaris just looks so great at the tabletop now. I mean, they do stand out against the rest, which is all firstborn, but we'll change it up over time as well. Alright, next pack is Pack Stormcrow in the heavy support side. These guys are obviously Devastators. There is no Long Fang sheet anymore, like there is no Rune Priest, like there is no Wolf Lord on foot. But I'm just calling these guys Long Fangs because that's what Space Wolves call their Devastator Squads. In this case, we've got the 2 Grav Cannons, the 2 Multi-Melters, and then my Sergeant or Pack Leader has the Melter Gun and Power Fist, which is not standard for a Devastator Squad. Normally in a standard Devastator Squad, I believe that you get a Combi Melter, but because I had the option to here, I did the Melter Gun with this squad. And once again, the remaining parts are their torsos, their legs, their heads have all come from the spare parts from the Grey Hunters box set. So yeah, these guys have a space wolfy look to them, despite being what's effectively a standard Devastator squad. So yeah, I was happy with how these guys turned out once again as well. Alright, moving on to Fast Attack, we've got Pack Warfist. And this was probably the most fun unit to build and work out and paint, mainly because these guys are effectively Swiftclaws. There hasn't been a Swiftclaw kit for a long time, so they're heavily kit bashed. They were, at their core, a kit I'd received from the Conquest magazine and had done nothing with. So I just added in some chests and some heads and some weapons from I had leftover from Space Wolf sets. You gave them different backpacks, put a bit of bling onto the lead bike, and then finally, because they can have a combi weapon, or the sergeant a combi weapon, I wanted to give a combi melter to the pack leader, but it didn't make sense to have him carrying both a thunder hammer in one hand and a combi weapon in the other. So the combi melter is strapped to the back of his bike with a leather strap, which was done in green stuff after the last video was recorded. And I was happy with how these guys turned out. I tried to do things like, when I was putting on the Valhallan snow, was leave like a furrow in the snow behind, like they've been pushed out of the way as they've ridden through, and then bulked up the snow around the base of the front tyre, so it looks like they're sort of still, in the process of pushing the snow in front of them out of the way. And yeah, once again, I like the effect that I got. Alright, the Ice-Scar Brotherhood, or the 5 Wolf, and this was the final squad that I did. And to be honest, I sort of put this one to the side because, not that I wasn't looking forward to painting it, just that it was so different in technique from the other models I'd done for the army that they sort of needed their own attention, especially around having so much flesh on them, having to work out what to do with the fur and the hair, and then all the little trinkets they carry. So look, these guys, I was unsure if I got them looking good. There were a lot of points, especially like with doing the fur, where the fur would look terrible, and then suddenly look good. Once it had a wash of ink on it and a dry brush of Tyrant Skull, for example, the fur went from looking very just patchy colours to quite natural through that process. So, once I sort of worked out all the techniques on the other models I wanted to use, it was relatively easy to go through and apply those to the Wolfen, just with the difficulty that they are models that once they've got things like their shields and their hammers, in this case, it's hard to get the brush in around some of their various parts. And I suppose you can look at them and say, well, if I can't get the brush there, it's hard to get my eyes there. But I try to make every model so it can be sort of picked up and examined from every angle, and not have giveaway missing areas of paint, for example. Although, looking at this picture now, I can actually see a bit that I forgot to paint. On the second guy from the left, there's a skull in the middle of his hammer that's supposed to be painted with Wraithbone and Skeleton Horde, so I had to fix that up. But it's funny, I miss that from time to time when I'm painting models and go back and look at it. It's actually one of the best pieces of advice I've heard about how to motivate yourself to paint when you're unmotivated to paint. And that's to say, if you can't paint a whole model or a whole squad, go back to something you've already painted and just give it 10% more. Just pick something that you would have done a little bit better or a little bit more. You've learned a new technique or a new skill since you did it, and just give it that little update, and it really refreshes the models for use on the table in your eye as well. So that's my advice too. So anyway, in here we've got to put Frost Claws on the pack leader. That's required. And then all the other guys have Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, and of course they all have the Storm Frag auto launchers. Once again, with Crusade being a power level based system, it's not as relevant having to worry about paying the whatever cost it is for the auto launchers, because it's all just covered in the power level cost of the unit. Alright, and finally we've got Brother Arn Kell, my venerable dreadnought with a Fenrisian Great Axe, Blizzard Shield and Heavy Flamer. I like this model. I like this kit. So it's for the most part it's the standard dreadnought kit, but it's got a whole bunch of different options. I like the fact that you can build either the Wolfen Dreadnought, the Venerable Dreadnought, Murderfang, Bjorn Fell-Handed, all with the same kit, just by choosing different fascias, different weapons, and they all look distinctly different enough that you could field everyone in an army and it wouldn't feel too samey having these models side by side. So in this case, this is just built as a standard Venerable Dreadnought, which I quite like, because it gives them the 2+ weapon skill, ballistic skill. This thing now is so survivable in Night Dead, between having the 6+ Feel No Pain that Venerable Dreadnoughts have, on top of the reducing all damage by 1 from Duty Eternal, on top of this guy having the Storm Shield for an invulnerable save. I really hope when I do take this guy to the table that he's going to be a hard unit to shift, and he can get around there and he can use that axe to do some serious damage to vehicles and tanks and monsters. Really this guy is built to be a monster slayer, and I want to give him the chance to do that. So that's all the models. So I have not yet played with them, but I've worked out the first time I do play, right now we're still doing predominantly 25-point combat patrols, and so my first use of this army will be Rurik Weirdfang, my Librarian, the Assault Intercessor Squad, Pack Fellhammer, Pack Stormcrow, the Devastator Squad, and then finally the Wolfen. I could have swapped out the Wolfen for the Dreadnought for the same power level, or alternatively swapped the Devastator Squad for the Dreadnought as well, but then I would have had to drop. I had nothing worth 4 points. That wouldn't be an option now. I know that the Smash Captain was worth 6 power level, and realistically speaking, in Crusade, especially in low points games, the extra ability like Smite, for example, from Librarians can make a huge difference. So although I really want to start leveling up and getting experience points onto my Smash Captain and give him a chance to get his Saga done, all he needs to do is charge 1 unit and he can get his Saga and then spend requisition points to have that Saga permanently completed and start every game. But initially, I think that I want to have my Librarian ready to go and try him out, because that extra mortal wounds from Smite can be a big difference when you're talking about 25 power level worth of models on the table. So I'll have to come back to you after the next show and tell you how the battle went. Originally I was going to save these models to reveal them to my friends at the game, but I decided once I finished paying them, I wanted to share them with somebody other than just you on my YouTube channel, and so I did post pictures of the models to that group of friends. I asked them first to try and guess what secret project I might have been working on, because they didn't actually know. And I had a number of funny guesses, a number of serious guesses. Some guessed Gene Stealer Colts, Katachan Infantry. What else was there? Admech, because Admech are quite popular right now, and apparently I've got a reputation for chasing the meta, even though I don't go to tournaments. In any case, nobody guessed Space Wolves, and when I put Space Wolf pictures up, I think people were a bit surprised, and we'll have to see how they actually do on the table. But now I want to give you a chance to have some input too, because I don't just want to stop here. Once we start playing games, we start getting repetition points, I'll want to add more units to the army, and I'm trying to decide what I should actually add next. I really like the idea of going after the iconic Space Wolf only units. So I put down things here like the Hounds of Morkai, which is one way to make Reavers actually worthwhile. Skyclaws are basically just the assault squad with jump packs. No kit for that anymore, but I can keep doing the whole kit bashing thing. The Stormfang gunship, I actually have the kit for it. It came in one of the box sets I got second hand in order to put this army together, so I could build one of those, and I'd like to do that model. I've always been quite partial to the flyers, even though they're not really where it's at right now in 9th edition, but I'd like to build that. Thunderwolf Cavalry, now that I've got that whole fur angled down pretty comfortably. I'd love to do Thunderwolf Cavalry, and in fact I've already picked up this kit so I can do it in the future. Wolfguard Terminators, I think that they look great. Terminators are still a very durable model for Space Marine armies, so I'm considering Wolfguard Terminators. And then looking at things that are more sort of generic, I always like aggressors. Every single Marine army I put together has aggressors because they're such a great unit in terms of just their sheer output, and they can be a good, I guess, distraction kind of effects where I want to get some bigger things across the board. My mates are used to the damage I can do with some aggressors, and so they'll try and take them out quite quickly and use their firepower on them. And being Gravis armored, they can do things like use Transhuman to be a bit harder to shift and absorb more shots in the process. And then finally, considering, I guess, transportation for some of my soft units, especially the Wolfen, for example. The Wolfen really need a Land Raider Crusader. They can't go in a Rhino. Or an Impulsor for the Assault Intercessors. Or just a Rhino for the Blood Claws. So there are options there. Oh, and also I've got the Space Wolf Primaris Lieutenant that originally came in Tooth and Claw, and then more recently came in the Space Wolf Combat Patrol box. So he's clearly a Space Wolf model. He'd be fun to paint up too. So give me your thoughts in the comments from these, or if you think there's something else I should be looking at. What should I be painting up next to add to my Space Wolves? And I guess as one more question, would you like to see more videos like this? Did you like? I know it was over a long period of time because I had a big lockdown in the middle, but I'm hoping that you've watched these videos and you've enjoyed seeing how this army's coming together, and you'll get to see more in future videos about how it actually performs on the table. I've got other Crusade armies I've got mulling around in my head, like redoing my sisters with a new army, doing Grey Knights, doing Thousand Suns. Pretty much every codex comes out, I buy it and I read it. I'm like, I want to do the Crusade of this. Although still Orcs hasn't grabbed me yet. I've never really been an Orc player to the same extent I've never really been a Space Wolf player. But if you would like to see me do more armies in the same way, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what armies you'd like to see in the comments below as well. So finally, next video, what will I be doing? So I'll be talking about how the first game went, how they performed on the table, what upgrades, if any, I bought, response to any comments on YouTube about what I should add to the faction and my progress in that. And then also chatting about whether or not I'm going to do more different videos around different factions too. So hopefully you've enjoyed the series so far. There is still more to come. I will try and make the break between the third and fourth videos much shorter. It just comes down to how fast I can get my friends together to play a Crusade game. And I'll make sure I get some photographs too. So probably the first game will be against my friends Black Templars, because he's the only other person in my group that has a pretty much fully painted army. So we can get some good photographs of the fully painted Space Wolves fighting the fully painted Black Templars, obviously in some kind of training mission, clearly, because why would they fight each other for any other reason? So anyway, I will let you digest the video, leave your comments, and I look forward to hopefully throwing up some more stuff for you to look at next time.